I haven't spoken in exactly 2 weeks, 5 days, 7 hours, and according to the clock on my handler's dashboard, 53 minutes. I shift in my seat, uncomfortable. The cuffs are cruel, but necessary, according to the adults. We're on a highway. I don't know which one, just that it wasn't destroyed. It's rare to see an intact highway. The radio is on, and I was appreciating old-school Taylor Swift till my handler switched it to the news with a violent stab of his finger. Good afternoon. It's 5 p.m. Time for your local and national news and weather forecast. A woman's voice buzzes through the static, and I immediately lunge forward to turn it off. I haven't felt suffocated in days, but there it is, that choking sensation twisting in my throat. It feels like I'm inhaling smoke, drowning in syrup. Before I can, however, my handler gives me the look. There's a reason he's been assigned to me. I hear him as clearly as day inside my head. Don't even think about it. It's been 6 months since the devastating wildfire incident, and the aftermath continues to affect survivors across the country, she says, pausing briefly. Rafe Smallwood, the man responsible for the deaths of more than 500,000 people, was sentenced to death yesterday and subsequently executed early this morning. There's something cruel and calculated in the way my handler cranks up the volume. Shrill static rips through my ears like splintered glass. He's middle-aged, his thick brown hair slicked back with foul-smelling gel that burned the back of my nose and throat. He's not really a talker, just like me. A big guy with a round, stony face. Married, though I can't imagine why. I can see the wedding ring he's failed to hide in his pocket. Despite ongoing appeals from human rights activists claiming he is innocent, the 24-year-old was executed today by lethal injection. The radio crackled. According to officials, the body will be returned to his family in the coming weeks. His brain has been donated for scientific research per federal law. I can feel my handler's eyes on me. He's waiting for a reaction. The news anchor continues, and I resist squeezing my eyes shut. My handler knows everything about me, what I've done, why I'm here, and what's going to happen to me. I know nothing about him. I wish I did. He would already be dead. The young man, originally from Mount Lebanon, Pittsburgh, was said to have confirmed psychic mutations resulting in... The window is open, and cold air blasts my face as I stick my head out, reveling in the breeze. The ruins of what used to be my town fly past in a grayish blur, collapsed buildings and homes, upended sidewalks and bridges reduced to rubble. The news anchor's voice collapses into static as we enter a tunnel, and I briefly appreciate the momentary silence. It doesn't last. In other news, the CDC has announced a possible link between... My eyes drift back to the dashboard clock. 2 weeks, 5 days, 7 hours, 59 minutes since I last spoke. I thought about what my first words might be. Do I ask for a lawyer? My parents? Or maybe I just tell everyone to go screw themselves. My handler switches the station again, this time to another news anchor. 24-year-old Harper Samuels is set to appear in court today following... He switches it again. Bruce Springsteen. He smiles, cranks up the volume, and leans back in his seat. We drive past a Pizza Hut. I miss pizza. Even though the building still stands, the foundations are crumbling, the windows blown out. I'm pulled out of my thoughts when my handler jerks the steering wheel to the left. In front of us, the road suddenly plummets down into a sinkhole, a gnawing hole of nothingness. Settling into my seat, I relax in the warm leather. I know cars, but I've never sat shotgun. I'm always in the back, either in a cage or dumped in the trunk, always ready to mobilize, to follow orders. I shake the thought away. Can I get a pizza? I asked, swallowing bile and memories. I might not know my handler, but I know his orders. He's already 1,000 steps ahead of the people trying to get an interview with me. I know exactly what he's been told. Make it look like an accident. A police car would look suspicious, so I got tucked into the passenger seat of a Range Rover. They even had a cover story in case we got pulled over. You're a father driving your daughter to Evacuation Zone 3. Take her somewhere quiet. Don't leave any traces. I already have a headache, and it's not my handler's cologne. The pain is dull, bright colors zigzagging across my vision. It feels intrusive, like a knife is being forced straight through my skull. I can briefly see 3 walls of an alley, this bulging frame between me and freedom. "I want pizza," I said louder, lifting my head. I noticed the subtle shift in my handler's body language. He's good at masking it, but I'm a quick study. He actually smiles. "Before you kill me," I add, my eyes finding the dashboard clock. It's 6 p.m., and I'm scheduled to die at 6:30 p.m., per his orders. "What kind of pizza?" He surprises me with a response, gesturing ahead. His accent is not what I expected. Boston. I bite back the urge to ask him to say coffee. "Look around, sweetheart. I'll make you a deal. If you point me to a fully functioning McDonald's, I'll go get you a Happy Meal." He's right. There's nothing but a disorienting gray blur of concrete as we drive past. No sign of the golden arches. I focus on the dashboard block, bright red ticking numbers. Numbers are all I know. I know ticking clocks. I know ceiling tiles. I know squares in carpets and rugs and dress patterns. I've been counting all my life. Counting when I'm bored, counting when I'm tired, counting when I'm stalling. And here I am, counting again. It's been 2,489 days, 35 hours, 13 minutes, and 43 seconds since I had freshly made pizza. Mom used to make it from scratch. I miss cheese. I miss hot, spicy pizza burning my tongue. I miss the first bite. I'm careful with my words, keeping my eyes forward. "You know, even Ted Bundy was given a final meal." I catch the slightest smirk curve on his otherwise stony face. "Where'd you learn that?" "Netflix," I said. "He refused a final meal, so they gave him the default instead." I noticed him relax slightly. "You want a final meal?" "Sure." His gaze flicks to the road ahead. "Tell me why you did it first." I weigh my next words. I have nothing left to lose. I'm going to die in... I glance at the dashboard clock. 23 minutes and 8 seconds. I don't say what I want to say. What's bubbling in my throat, what clings stubbornly beneath my tongue. Instead, I stay very still. "Did you know that when you take apart a doll and put her back together, she's never quite the same?" Another glance at the clock. 21 minutes. My handler sighs. Outside, we've entered a city, but I don't recognize it. There are no signs anymore, so I don't know which route we're on. Just the same view I've had since being crammed into the passenger seat of this car, a jagged crack tearing through the heart of the country. I think I see the ruins of a hotel, maybe. Then a nail salon. They're still pulling bodies like doll pieces from the rubble. I look away quickly, ducking my head low. My handler reaches into his pocket, pulls out a cigarette, and lights it up. He takes a long drag, blowing smoke out the window. "I'm not following your analogy, kid." I'm not sure what an analogy is. I shut my eyes, refusing to look. I count the seconds anyway, because I can't stop myself. I need to count. 18 minutes. I keep my head bowed as we pass crowds of survivors already banging on the windows. They hold signs and pictures with strangers' faces. When a woman jumps in front of us and slams her hands into the windshield, my handler quickly rolls the windows down. I start to panic, chest burning, throat twisting. It's like vomiting, but the screams clogged in my throat are not mine. They taste like blood-tinged vomit. I don't look at the clock or any numbers that would normally calm me, because they're already counting down. In the 4th grade, I got my first attention. I try to find an anchor. There are no patches or patterns on the car seats, so I count the scuffs on my jeans. I can already sense them. They hit like lightning bolts, each one more painful, like a pickaxe to my skull. Every voice makes me want to scream, but I can't protect myself. I can't block them out with my hands, and even if I did have hands to clamp over my ears, they'd still bleed through. I can see them as colors, bright explosions of light illuminating the back of my eyes. I'm not afraid of the dead, of the bodies being pulled from collapsed foundations. I'm afraid of the survivors. They sound like television static. "Where is my son?" Names I don't know, men, women, children, all of them come alive inside me, voices crashing into each other, disjointed and broken. "Where is my daughter?" I've lost them all. All of them are dead. Gone. I'm alone. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I try to shake them away, but they are vast. violent. Voices become images. Images become faces. Faces become memories. And some of them are strong enough to leech onto me. No, I'm the one clinging to them. The disease crawling inside their heads. I can see from the point of view of a child. I see her arms fly out for her mother, but her mother is gone. I feel her agony, her loneliness, her pain. I regret letting her in. Mommy. Her words crawl up my throat. I can see through her eyes. I can see a family table. I can see the proud smile on her teacher's face. Cartoons on the TV and plastic stars on her ceiling. I try to shake her away, but it's like pulling myself from quicksand. It's too thick and I'm stuck, drowning, suffocating, screaming, like her. Mommy, where are you? Where did you go? Where's Daddy? There was a bad earthquake. Mommy, I can't find home. I can't find Bunny. I can't find Spencer. Out of the way, little girl. The world jerks violently, and I'm torn from her, flying. But there's nobody to catch me. I'm propelled forward in my seat as my handler steps on the brake, my eyes snapping open, yanked back by my seatbelt. I can already taste blood in my mouth. I can't see for a moment. Everything is blurry. Her memories splinter. The girl's name is on my tongue. Aria. We turn down another road leading into the city, and Aria's thoughts fade to a dull whimper. Like cell phone service, the further we drive, Aria's mind detaches from me, piece by piece. Then, she's gone. I focus on my words, on my last words, the last time I'll be able to tell my story. In the 4th grade, I got my first attention. I asked why you killed 500,000 people. My handler snaps. His voice is an anchor creeping back through the silence left behind. Now your fucking life story. I sense movement. He's only turning down the volume on the radio. Go on, he said as we approached the city border. There's already a long stream of traffic crammed into one single lane ahead of us, and beyond that, a skyline of nothing. I feel the breath catch in my throat as we get closer, and the sight twists my guts. Proud giants, once standing tall, reduced to dominoes toppling into each other. My handler sighs when I duck my head further. The traffic isn't letting up, so we're not going anywhere. He leaned back in his seat with a defeated exhale. The floor's yours, kid. Fine. He wanted the start. I'd give him the whole novel. Halfway through Miss Trescott's long, boring lecture on timetables, I realized I had superpowers. It wasn't the first time I'd come to this conclusion. I was sitting with my chin resting on my fist, my pen lodged between my teeth, when I noticed that whenever I glanced at the clock, the hands didn't move. But when I looked away, somehow they did move. Magic. My pen popped out of my mouth. I was so excited. I threw my hand up to tell the whole class. Miss Trescott just gave me the same look she always gave me when I decided to announce something. I thought it was cool. The other kids didn't share my excitement. Keep your thoughts to yourself, Harper, Miss Trescott said, shooting me a warning look. Stop daydreaming and start listening. I ducked my head, well aware of my ears burning red. Kids were already giggling, whispering, muttering to each other. Teachers didn't like me. I was either too loud or too quiet. Kids were ruthless, and there was zero in between. On my report card would be, Harper is a bright child, but she never listens, she's always in the clouds, she can't seem to make friends. But I was listening to my teachers. I just didn't understand what they were saying. I didn't have many friends. I did have a friend called Micah, but then she started talking about boys and makeup and slowly gravitated toward the other girls. I didn't like makeup, and boys were still gross. I read books in the bathroom stalls instead, but that just gave me the unfortunate and, I guess, genius nickname, Harper Collins. Class ended, and I was eager to make a quick getaway. I was zipping up my backpack when someone prodded me in the back. I twisted around. Evie Hart was one of the most popular girls in class, but only because she had an indoor swimming pool. She was tiny, like a fairy, with red hair pulled into pigtails and always dressed exclusively in pink. Our moms had been friends when we were babies, so we used to have play dates. Moms really are naive, expecting their kids to be friends too. Even back then, I could tell Evie Hart didn't like me. She liked playing with dolls. I liked playing pirates. I could always tell she was patiently waiting to say goodbye, arms folded, nose stuck up, like I was a worm she wanted to stamp on. When she was old enough to make her own decisions, Evie pulled me aside after I'd been invited to her slumber party to say,
I know my mom keeps inviting you to my house because our moms are friends, but I don't like you, Harper. I don't want you in my house. Tell your mom you don't like me.
So, that was the end of that beautiful friendship. I was blunt with Evie and told her I didn't like her either, and that she looked like a horse. That drove a wedge between our moms. I was forced to apologize for offending poor, defenseless Evie, who was smirking at me behind her mother's back. Evie, the spoiled brat, got what she wanted, and my mother quietly removed her mom from family gatherings. Evie only prodded me in the back when she wanted something. She was smiling, which was rare. Evie only wore that type of smile when she was about to ruin someone's day.
Hey, Harper.
Evie's smile was suspiciously friendly. She grabbed my shoulders and turned me toward the back of the classroom, where our teacher was helping Freddie with his backpack zipper.
I dare you to ask Miss Trescott what DILF stands for.
I wasn't expecting someone to actually say it. The voice came from a freckled brunette hunched over his desk, eyes glued to his 3DS. Miss Trescott's head snapped up, her expression darkening. I caught Freddie's smirk. I'm sorry? What was that?
I just told you,
the boy muttered, idly chewing his stylus.
That's what it means. Detention, Rafe.
Miss Trescott barked.
You too, Evelyn. You should know better.
The boy, Rafe, dropped his 3DS, eyes wide.
But I was just saying what it means. Detention.
Miss Trescott repeated, her tone a warning. Do not argue with me.
But, Rafe,
she snapped.
Do you want me to call your father?
Rafe's mouth snapped shut. Instead of talking back, he buried his head in his arms, groaning.
This is so stupid. I didn't even mean it. I was saying what it meant. Miss Trescott?
Evie sang.
Harper said it too.
I don't care about playground politics. My handler grumbles, snapping me back to the present. It's raining. Fat droplets strike the windscreen, trailing down the glass. The sky is darker, which means I'm running out of time. I risk a glance at the dashboard clock. 15 minutes and 8 seconds glares back. We idle under a red light beneath the foreboding sky of a skyscraper looming like a wounded god. The heart of the city is as depressing as the rest of the road. If I squint, I can see Lady Liberty's head, or what's left of it, her iconic emerald crown poking from the Hudson. I've seen movies like this, but there was always a monster, always something to be afraid of. I lean my head against the window. I can see shady alleyways still standing, even shallow sinkholes where my body can be disposed of. Another glance at the clock. 13 minutes and 23 seconds. My handler taps his fingers on the wheel. I don't want any fodder, kid, he mutters, eyes on the road. The light flashes green and we jerk forward. Get to the point. So much for stalling. Detention was just the three of us. Evie and Rafe sat in the back row, whispering and tapping their pens, while I slumped in a front row seat, half asleep. I was the only one who noticed when Miss Trescott reached into her desk and pulled out a gun. Her eyes didn't blink. Her arms moved like they weren't hers, like a marionette. It happened so fast, almost too fast to register what was happening. She raised the gun, shoved it into her mouth, and I couldn't move. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. I was frozen. Couldn't cry. Couldn't breathe. The bang splintered through the silence, where there had once been my shuddery breaths. Her body swayed like a puppet, then collapsed, face first, onto her desk. Red bloomed across the papers she'd been grading, moving fast, seeping from the edges. I didn't realize I was screaming until I heard my own wail. Didn't realize I was on the floor, on my knees, screaming. I could still hear the gunshot rattling in my skull. The others were silent. Out of the corner of my eye, they sat stiff in their seats, unmoving and wide-eyed, like mannequins. I could hear Rafe's sharp breaths, like he was hyperventilating. The world tipped sideways, and I dove under my desk, screaming until my throat was raw and wrong, my hands clamped over my ears. Everything was so loud, screeching in my skull, the ringing in my head, the crack of the bullet. It felt like years had passed before warm hands were coaxing me to my feet. But I was still screaming. I could still hear the gunshot, still see the blood. Harper. The voice was a stranger's. They led me all the way outside, squeezing my hand tightly. I barely remembered leaving the classroom. It was raining, but I didn't feel the drops soaking into my shirt and hair. Adults crowded around me, but none of them were my parents. I was lifted into the back of a white van. Evie and Rafe were already inside, wrapped in blankets. Rafe had his head buried in his knees. Evie stared forward, like she could see something I couldn't. The stranger, a middle-aged man with glasses, knelt in front of me. To me, he was a fast-moving blur. I blinked and his face swam into view. "Don't worry, your parents have been informed." His expression darkened, and I could glimpse through his facade. He was clinical, quite cold. Cases like these require immediate treatment, following the Children First law. He held out his hand, though none of us shook it. "Hello, my name is Dr. Wonder, and I'm from the Children's Trauma Defense Division." His voice was soft, like ocean waves crashing in my ears as the van swayed me back and forth. "Call it witness protection, but for your age. It'll only be for a few weeks. Think of it like a vacation. We get to make sure you three are A-OK, and you get to miss school." He chuckled and leaned back. "Now, doesn't that sound like fun?" "Dr. Wonder?" My handler interrupts again, pulling me back to reality. 11 minutes and 3 seconds. "Why'd your 4th grade teacher even have a gun?" I relax in my seat.
It was something like that.
He scoffs. "Tell the story correctly, or don't tell it at all." I open my mouth to answer, but blurred, flashing red lights ahead clamped it shut. "Shit," he mutters. "Don't move." We came to a stop at a roadblock, and he tells me to duck my head. I don't. I'm too scared. Maybe this is the point where I'm going to be executed. He shoves me down anyway, and already voices stab at the back of my head. The window slides open, ice-cold air prickling the back of my neck. "Afternoon." My handler greeted a looming shadow outside, and I get a single flash. An empty bed, and a room littered with beer bottles. "Who's the passenger?" Border Control asks. I sense the man leaning in. Another flash, stronger this time. A wedding. Bright yellow explodes across my vision. A newborn. Yellow turns to a sickly green. A woman screams, and the colors twist and contort to dark blue. Nuclear pain strikes the back of my head, sharp and intrusive. I try to shake away the splintered images. A ruined wedding, a single meal for one. That same newborn, now a teenager. Red bleeds to dark purple. "I fucking hate you, Dad." The teenager's voice trickles from him to me, and his grief crashes over me. It tastes like expired milk, feels like a knife being plunged into my skull. I swallow it down, but it crawls back up my throat, followed by an eruption of pain in my temples. "You're a piece of shit." Another flash. I try to blink it back, but it's relentless. The boy is dead, his body crushed under collapsed foundations. There's a long pause before the officer speaks out loud. "Is she doing all right, sir?" I can sense the silence around us thickening as I clamp my teeth around a mouthful of bile. I see a police badge, a faucet, and a fistful of blue-tinted pills. He's growing suspicious. When he asks me to lift my head, I stay still, paralyzed. "Yeah, sorry, it's just my daughter," my handler replies smoothly. "Taking her to evacuation zone 3, hoping to get her into Canada." I feel his hands awkwardly patting me on the back. "Maddie's feeling a little car sick." Maddie. Maybe he has kids. Another excruciating pause, and I feel the officer move back. So do his thoughts, bungeeing, detaching, splintering into fragmented nothing. "All right then, sir, go on ahead," he says, and the window rolls back up. I don't move until the taste of sour milk mixed with whiskey and toothpaste leaves my mouth. Not yet. My handler snaps when I risk jerking my head up. He takes a sharp turn, and I almost topple off the seat. The road is quieter. There are no voices. Keep your head down. I can hear the rain pouring now, heavy drops drumming against the window. The low hum of the engine is comforting. So, you guys saw your teacher shoot herself in the head and were put into witness protection, and that's why you decided to flatten half of the country. No, I managed to whisper. I avoid the dashboard clock as 11 minutes tick down to 10, then 9.
At first, it was like being on vacation.
I chose the words carefully. The Children's Trauma Defense Division was a towering glass building with checkerboard windows, a labyrinth of clinical white hallways, and spiral staircases. But there were no real windows. Whenever I thought I'd found one, I was only peering into another room. I had my own room with a bed and a desk. I didn't like the clinical, hospital-like feel or the stink of antiseptic polluting every hallway. But the place did have a swimming pool and a games room where I spent most of my time. In between, we had private trauma therapy sessions. Dr. Wilhelm made it clear we'd be staying for 2 weeks, and that our parents would collect us. So we made the most of it. Evie and I were forced to talk. She turned to me while we were playing Monopoly in the games room and said, with those wide, unblinking eyes,
"Do you think Rafe is looking at me?"
I guessed that. With me being the only other girl in the room, she had no choice but to gossip with me. I was 10 years old, so no, I didn't think Rafe, who was sitting across from us staring into space with his hands clenched into fists, was looking at her. We didn't talk about the elephant in the room because Evie was still having panic attacks, and Rafe slipped into a trance-like state every time I was brave enough to bring up what we saw. That night was the last time I saw Evie and Rafe for a while. I expected to be sent home in the morning, but when I was woken by a nurse instead of breakfast, I was gently pulled into a small, white room. There was a table with a plate of eggs, sunny side up, toast soldiers, and a glass of fresh orange juice. The nurse introduced herself as Dr. Caroline. She took a seat at her littered desk and gestured for me to sit down and begin eating. I did. The cafeteria food was either oatmeal or mystery meat, so eggs were a surprise. I was asked questions while I ate. Just the usual ones, like my hobbies and my favorite school subjects. I told her I hated math, and she said, "I don't like math either. Do you like counting, Harper? Can you count to 20 for me?" She was getting closer. I was on my last mouthful of eggs when I felt the prick at the back of my neck. It hurt. A chill ran down my spine, like she was pouring ice down my back. My fork clattered to my plate, and I almost choked when her ice-cold fingers pressed a Band-Aid into place. "Don't worry," she said. "It's just something to make your mind less scary." That's rough, kid. Presently, my eyes are burning, tears are rolling down my cheeks. We were 10 years old, I tell my handler, squeezing my eyes shut. This time, I refuse to look at the clock. 8 minutes and 4 seconds to tell our story. I don't expect sympathy, but I haven't cried in so long. Crying was weak, I was told. Crying wasn't the correct response. It stopped feeling like a vacation when those pricks in my neck became more frequent. We were drugged every morning with a sharp stab to the neck. There were always eggs and juice waiting for me. On the 4th day, I threw it all back up. I remember seeing red specks in my vomit, and my stomach hurt. My head hurt. Everything hurt. When I lay down on my bed, my body felt wrong and stiff, like I was a puppet on strings. I asked if I could go home, but I got the same response. "Oh, Harper, it hasn't been 2 weeks yet. Don't worry, you can go home soon. Just a few more days." Days bled into weeks and then months. We were isolated in suffocating white rooms. No parents. I didn't see the others for a whole 3 months, and in that time, I realized counting was my only escape. I was left on my own for days without food or water. I started to count ceiling tiles, then the tiles on my floor, then my breaths. My ceiling had exactly 5,678 and a half tiles. I had to drop down to my knees and count every single floor tile to be completely accurate. 18,127. When the voices started whispering in my head, they called it idiopathic schizophrenia. It's a trauma response, Harper, they told me. But the voices got louder, even with more tests and silver tubes in my arm and surgery I didn't want. They cut off all my hair and told me I would start to feel so much better. But sitting in a small, dimly lit white room with my head submerged in ice-cold water, those voices only deepened, rooting themselves inside my head. I could hear Dr. Caroline like buzzing static. Her voice tripped up, faded, in and out, but she was getting clearer. "Can you hear me, Harper?" I nodded, and she gently withdrew my head from the water. I shivered, blinking back ice-cold drops. "You're getting better," she told me, but I didn't feel better. The voices were louder than the ones spoken out loud. Several months went by, and my hair slowly grew back. I started to see voices as colors, and then taste them. Dr. Caroline said, while my disease was curable, I had to learn how to understand it. I saw Rafe one morning while I was being escorted to test room A. He looked like he was heading to the cafeteria, led by a blonde woman. His hands were cuffed behind his back. Rafe was wearing the exact same outfit as me, a white t-shirt and matching pants. His hair was longer now, and a white bandage was wrapped around his head. He surprised me with a friendly smile. "Hey, Harper," Rafe said as we passed each other. His other voice, however, was more of a growl, slamming into me, exploding hues of yellow and orange streaking across my vision. "Mother." I squeezed my eyes shut, but it wasn't just his voice this time. There was a violent flash, one I couldn't blink away. I saw an identical white room to mine. There was a bed, a table, and a single soda can situated in the middle. Pain. I felt it like knives sticking into the back of my head. But it wasn't mine. Neither were the hands speckled with blood. I was in someone else's body. No, I thought, dizzily. I was inside Rafe's mind. I saw Dr. Caroline's hard eyes, her lips carved into a scowl. "It's not hard, Rafe," she snapped, and more blood hit his palms, running in thick rivulets. The soda can toppled onto its side, and I felt his body weaken, his knees hitting the ground, his hands clawing at his hair. Dr. Caroline sighed, picked up the can, and placed it back onto the table. "Harper?" I didn't realize I was paralyzed until my nurse gently tugged on my hand. "Come on, sweetheart. Dr. Caroline's waiting." Rafe was glaring at me, his lips curled. "This is all her fault." His other voice spat. I saw another flash, bright red bleeding across my vision. This time, a soda can violently slammed into the wall, exploding on impact. Rafe met my gaze. "What is she looking at?" He looked away, ducking his head to avoid me. His other voice exploded into a vicious buzzing, agony ripping across the back of my skull. "Stop staring at me, Harper Collins." I counted a full year before I was allowed to see Evie and Rafe again. I was 12 years old when the two of them entered the playground we first entered a year ago. Evie sat in the corner, cross-legged, and buried her head in her knees. She was silent. Even her other voice was silent. Her hair was longer, pulled into a ponytail, dark shadows underlining her eyes. Rafe pulled out a game of Jenga, built a tower, and then knocked it down without touching it. He repeated it 3 times, loudly building a tower and knocking it down with a single jerk of his neck. Rafe was building a 4th when a voice sliced into the silence. "Stop!" Evie's voice was barely a croak. Rafe did stop. He stopped completely, freezing in place, a Jenga brick still in his hand. Evie's voice scared me. It scared her too. Because after staring at a frozen Rafe, her eyes wide and filled with tears, she whispered, "I'm sorry. You can move now." Rafe wasn't as mad as I thought. He just continued building Jenga towers. It became increasingly obvious we wouldn't be going home, and the more time I spent with the others, I realized why. Rafe had headaches and nosebleeds, and objects lost gravity around him. Sometimes the ground would shake when he got mad. Evie stopped speaking, terrified of her commanding voice. Instead, she insisted on carrying around a notepad. Our symptoms were PTSD, the adults claimed. We were sick, traumatized, overactive imaginations, adolescence. It was puberty. Blah, blah, blah. We were always given the same BS. We're the adults and you're the children. We know better than you. However, we were officially diagnosed with psychic phenomena. Psi, according to Dr. Wilhelm, was a specific mutation in our brains, triggered by significant trauma during childhood. I was even given an official name by the other voice, the one I heard even when my lips weren't moving. Neuroempathy. Rafe had psychokinetic syndrome, PKS, and Evie was diagnosed with thalamic control disorder, TCD. When we were 12, Rafe launched a Range Rover across a parking lot and then slept a whole week. I saw masked people marching in and out of his room. The next time I saw him, his hair had been sheared off. Evie compelled a guard to shoot himself. She didn't mean to. At least, that's what her other voice kept screaming. I remember the feeling of blood spraying my face, warm against my skin. Rafe tried to run and was quickly captured and wrestled to the ground. We were 12. The adults all told us the same thing. We were fine. These symptoms would pass as we entered our teenage years. They said we didn't really see brain chunks flying out of the guard's skull. That was just our hormones. We just had such vivid imaginations. Rafe decapitated his mother on Visitor's Day. It was the first and only time I saw my mother. Our parents were allowed inside the cafeteria. I listened to my mom's other voice, the one too scared to touch me, while her real voice told me she loved me. The room was so loud I could barely hear her other voice over everyone else's. Rafe's mother was loud, both her real and other voice. She demanded to know why his hair was so short, why she could no longer recognize her son. Rafe sat stiff in his chair. He was mute, silent. Only his eyes moved, flicking back and forth. He terrified me. One moment, his mother was screaming at him. The next, a horrific, squelching sound sent the room into a panic. Rafe had snapped his mother's head clean off her neck, leaving a sharp skeletal stump and a body that, for a moment, jerked like it was still alive. Rafe dropped to his knees, screaming, and the ceiling caved in, crushing my mother to death. I still remember her sputtering other voice telling me to stay away. We were fucking 12. Rafe was dragged away, hysterical, every light splintering, every device going dark, the ground rumbling beneath my feet. I didn't see him or Evie until our first deployment at the age of 17. I had counted exactly 258,789 ceiling tiles by the time I was 17 years old. My hair had grown all the way down to my stomach. I didn't remember why my room was covered in blood, why my own shit was smeared across the walls. I don't remember anything except sunny-side-up eggs. I was lying on my back, counting shit stains on my ceiling, when I was pulled from my tiny room. I didn't know the day, or the time, or the year. I was 15 the last time I looked in the mirror. My hands were bloody from trying to claw out my own throat. I was led down those same spiraling hallways, but this time, I knew each one. I knew my guard, even when her face was masked. Susie, she had 2 daughters and a husband. When she grabbed my wrist, Susie was careful to wear gloves. If she didn't, I would tell her that her husband was dead and that she had murdered her own children, dumping their entrails down the toilet and eating the rest. Dr. Wilhelm met me outside, where I was stuffed into the back of a police van and given orders to track down a drug dealer. I could already smell him. He was halfway across town, and I was seeing his entire life, abandoned at the age of 8 and forced to raise himself. I saw grimy hotel bathrooms and women taking advantage of him, a deluge of green and brown drowning my vision. His thoughts smelled like vomit. I led the chase across town. It was my job to track the people down, and I would leave the rest to the others. It had been so long since I'd seen them that I barely recognized Evie when she jumped out of the passenger seats of the Hummer. She wore an oversized sweatshirt, the hood pulled over, dyed black hair hanging in half-lidded eyes. Her hands were tied behind her back, and yet the adults surrounding her looked afraid. Evie was known as an omen. When she appeared, the air turned cold, and the flocks of birds scattered across the sky. I could see my breath as she screamed with that other voice, a sound so powerful it drove me to my knees. She commanded the man to stop, but somehow he kept running. Rafe wasn't usually brought on these types of missions. He was considered a last resort, but this guy was high profile, so they needed him. The 17-year-old was dragged from the back of the car, muzzled, a bag pulled over his head. With a single glance, Rafe flung the perp into a dumpster. When told, "That's enough," he tore the guy to shreds and used his intestines to choke the corpse. He didn't look at me. He didn't even look at himself. Rafe was covered in blood, guts, and dirt. His hair was thick, plastered over wide, unblinking eyes. He didn't speak, snarling whenever anyone but his handler got too close. When Evie shot me a wide grin, I realized she no longer had a tongue. "Harper," her other voice giggled in my head. "It's nice to see you again." On the ride home, the 3 of us sat in the back. Rafe rested his head on my shoulder. I pretended not to hear his other voice. We were a team, a special team hunting bad people, also known as the Wildfire Unit. "That's enough, kid." My handler snapped me out of it. I opened my eyes and looked at the clock. 6:28 p.m. The car had stopped, and everything is silent. I smile as my handler pushes open the door and leads me out into the guttered streets. We walk the edge of a crack that splits the earth in two. I like the feel of raindrops trickling down the back of my neck. He shoves me into a narrow alley. The ice-cold butt of his gun finds my spine, but I'm not afraid. There are no other voices, just silence, and I revel in it. "So, why'd you do it, kid?" "Why did I do it?" After they drugged me, strapped me down, and extracted my bone marrow while I was still conscious, after ripping Evie's voice away and turning Rafe into a glorified attack dog, why did I combust every brain? Why did I let Rafe out of his cage to shred Dr. Wilhelm's face from the bone? Why did Evie crawl into every American citizen's head and tell them to die? Why did Rafe split the world in half with a single panic attack? I feel myself smiling as my handler's gun briefly leaves my spine so he can reload it.
Because we're kids.
I laugh and close my eyes.
We don't know any different.
6:30. I can already sense her footsteps, and I revel in each one. "Put the gun in your mouth," Evie's other voice ordered my handler. I sensed his resolve crumble. His arms dropped to his sides. And pull the trigger. I don't even jump when his blood splatters the back of my neck. When I twist around, Evie isn't smiling. At 24 years old, she's still tiny. I raise my brows at her choices of clothes. A wedding dress. I noticed a slow trickle of red seeping from her nose. Evie only had one question. Where's Rafe?
Thank you for listening and delving with me into the dark together.
Please remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you feel so inclined. The more engagement this video gets, the more YouTube will push my content to others.
Thus, the following will grow.
All stories read in this channel will be available on Spotify, iTunes, and just about everywhere else. Links in the description.
Thank you for listening and feeding the cause. We'll be seeing you